Welcome to the expert lecture series, and today is the second expert lecture, offline lecture that has been planned and organized. So, as many of you have already seen the mail and the poster, I would like to introduce to you today our renowned expert, Dr. Deborah Thiagarajan. So, Dr. Deborah is the founder-president of Madras Craft Foundation, and she's also the honorary director of Dakshinachitra Heritage Museum. She's also the past director of Dakshinachitra Heritage Museum, an NGO which efforts to preserve, promote and showcase everyday arts, architecture and folk performing arts of South India from the 19th century to present day. She was the convener and founder of Tamil Nadu State Chapter for the Indian National Trust of Art and Culture Heritage. This was from the period 1984 to 1998. Dr. Deborah holds an MA from University of Pittsburgh. She also holds an MA from University of Pennsylvania. She has completed her PhD from University of Madras from the Department of Ancient Indian History and Culture. She has done 1-year internship at University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology, short-term museum courses at Smithsonian, Washington. She has also done a Japan Foundation program, which is a 2-week seminar in Japan in various community museums for examining representation of gender and minorities. She has also been on an exchange program with Peabody Essex Museum, Massachusetts, for a period of 3 months. And some of the achievements and awards include the Pride of Chennai 2016 by Rotary Club. She's been awarded as the Women Achiever from 2015 awards by India Today. She's also been awarded as the Champion of Chennai 2014. She has received the Ritz Magazine Award 2014. Indo-American Association Award for Chennai 2013, Lifetime Achievement Award by Rotary Club in the year 2012, Vocational Achievement Award by Rotary Club, and Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Award. So I feel it's a privilege and a great opportunity for NIFT Chennai and Foundation program to have a multifaceted and a renowned art historian of the city to have with us today to share her views, to share her opinions, and also to give you an insight on the art history, heritage, and about the museums. Can we have a huge round of applause for Dr. Deborah Thiagarajan, please?
Anyway, thank you for inviting me here. It's nice to see all of you. I hear all of you have gone to Dakshinachitra. Is that right? You've all gone to the museum? Okay, have you ever wondered why a museum like Dakshinachitra? Why is it important? What does it tell us? And I know a lot of people keep asking, why did I do it? Because I'm an American. I came here in 1970, so I've been in India for 55 years. And when I first came, I worked for over 3 years in villages in Tamil Nadu, in Western Tamil Nadu on a nutrition project. I was first an anthropologist, and then I did art history. And then I worked for another year with CARE, which is the organization, it's a US organization, which provided most of the food for the midday meals program. At that time, food was only given to the lowest 1/3 economically poor students. And in those 3 years that I was in villages, I saw all the good, I saw all the bad. I was in homes of women. I mainly interviewed women with a colleague, and I saw how tough their lives were, but in a sense, how they accepted, how humane they were, how generous of spirit they were. And it was a very humbling experience for me. because they would give whatever they had and whatever they didn't have. And I also saw that there was a feeling of dejection because they felt that no longer, say the weavers felt no longer were handlooms. This is in 1973. So they were already feeling that handlooms were going to be replaced. The folk performing artists felt that with cinema, what would their future be? And the architects, the stapatis, the traditional architects, they felt that with cement coming in, that their skills were no longer necessary. Even the carvers, they felt that their skills were no longer necessary. This was a time when art was still very much a part of everyday life. And I could see that with modernization, India would change. They could also see that. And what would happen to this culture? Would there be a place for it in the future? So I hope students like you will look at the craftspeople and the folk performing artists, learn from them, and see what it is that you can help with them through design and through support. I'll show you just a small, it's a promotional film for Dakshinachitra. We're an NGO, and we have to raise our own money, and we are self-supporting. So I wanted to say why I set up Dakshinachitra. That village experience was the main reason. And then, as head of INTAC, we would go to the government and we would ask them for a heritage law so that all the historical buildings wouldn't be taken down. And they said, but nobody cares about heritage. We're a democracy. Why should we listen to a handful of people like you? So they would do nothing. And they have finally, after 25 years, passed the heritage law, but they don't implement it very well. And then I also married a Chettiar from Madurai. And I don't know if you've heard of Chettinad. Have any of you heard of Chettinad? The Chettiars from Chettinad were, I would say, financial entrepreneurs. They did most of their work in Burma, that's Myanmar now, and Malaysia, Vietnam, and Sri Lanka. And they came back from these countries and they built these very large houses. And they followed the basic prescriptions from the earlier texts from the 7th century, the Brahat Samhita, the Mayamata, the Manashri Sangalya. These were the texts that were followed. And they used all the craft skills that were around to embellish these houses. Because they'd been abroad, they saw what culture did in Southeast Asia, and they suddenly sat up and looked at all the skills that they had in India. So how could they use those skills? And after the British left, the craftspeople here were actually starving because there was no one to patronize them. So from the early 1800s onward, there was no patronage of craft people in India. And that was very sad. Even the Marathas came in, they helped, but most of the money had gone. And when we set up Dakshinachitra, and we founded a society in 1984, there was still a lot of colonial hangover. A lot of people, particularly young people like you, had no idea what their culture was. Because all they'd heard was Britain, British culture. And it had said that Indian culture was not good. They had orgies, they had all kinds of things. Of course, the British didn't understand it at all. And so there was a hangover of colonialism. But the young people started to question. But they didn't start to question until the end of the 80s. So how many years is that? 35, 40 years ago. They started to think, okay, what is our culture? Who are we? Where are we from? And it's for that reason also that I set up Dakshinachitra. because I felt people had to understand their heritage. They had to understand the richness of the culture. And since I had come from outside, I could see how rich the culture was. But people who had been here for generations, they were bored with it, they saw it every day, they never thought about it. So it's time now that we all think about it. So that was the reason for setting it up in the 80s. That's when I started to set up the foundation. And we opened in 1996. And we've been around now for almost 29 years. So anyway, I'll show you this short story. I said it's a promotional film on Dakshinachitra, and then we'll start my presentation. In my presentation, what I really want you to do, you've all been to Dakshinachitra. When you see something, you have to think about it. You have to put it in your mind. It has to be a part of you. You can't just look at something and go away. You have to say, what is it telling me? Where is it from? What can I learn from it? That's very important. You have to experience what you're seeing. Seeing is not so easy, actually. Looking is easy, but seeing something really, you have to work at it. Most people only look, they don't see. So anyway, I'm just going to do a few items from Dakshinachitra. This is the Chettinad House, the entrance to the Chettinad House in Tamil Nadu. I talked a little bit about Chettinad, and we'll see how they've designed their houses. So we're going to talk about entranceways. How important is an entrance to a house, particularly in traditional society? So the Chettiars had money, so they lavished it on their houses. They put here, this is their entrance, actually that's their veranda, which we call a tinai. They put stone columns outside because otherwise, if they put wood, they'd be spoiled by the rain. They put columns. Every morning we put columns. They put columns because it keeps the positive energies in the house. And they brought teak from Burma because they worked in Burma. And so in Tamil Nadu, we have just country wood. We don't have really strong wood like in Kerala. So all these columns are from Burmese teak. And look at the capitals. Every capital was carved. And every house had a different carving on their capitals. Look at their door. They lavished a lot of art on their doors. They're very large. And the center part of the door has, can you see what it is? Do you know what it is? Who's the goddess in the front? Who's the goddess? It's Lakshmi, goddess of wealth. That's what you would think would be at the doors of people in finance. And she's surrounded by 2 elephants. What do the elephants symbolize? Any of you know? Yeah, they are the rain clouds, and they symbolize rain, because rain in an agricultural economy means wealth, because it means harvest, it means food. Most of all, it means food. And on the side of what we call them struts, what do you see in the struts? I don't know if you can see it. There's a springing horse with a warrior on top. And down below there's a yali. Now, why would they put a springing horse with a warrior on top of it? Have you ever been to Meenakshi Temple? Have you been to the Tinnavelli Temple, Mayavaram? There's so many temples where you'll find this in stone, actually. You'll find it in stone in the mandabas. You've heard of the Vijayanagar Empire from Hampi? Well, the emperors there said, all these Nayaks, they were governors to the Vijayanagar Empire. And he told his governors, wherever you are, embellish the temples, expand the temples. And so you'll find these mandapams with all these figures in stone, huge pillars with these stone figures throughout many, many temples in Tamil Nadu. This was done in the 1600s, when the Nayaks were the governors. And anyway, so that's the history. So it always helps to know a little bit about the history of what you're looking at. Now what's happening? So how were the verandas used? Actually, there are women sitting here today. Women use the verandas. But in the past, these verandas in the Chettiar houses were only for men. And that's where they sat and talked and, did a lot of their business on the veranda. Now, verandas were very important. Every house, no matter how wealthy or how small, had a veranda. This is an agricultural house. Actually, their veranda extends a lot. And next to it is a weaver's house. And all these verandas, well, and the next one after this is a basket maker's house. But every house, no matter how rich or poor, had a veranda. Why did they have verandas? Any idea? Yeah? But you have to say it louder?
For people who are not of their house,
Yeah.
sit and talk.
Yeah,
Negotiation.
she's right. She said for people who are not of that house, so they can socialize. Because nobody except people from the house were allowed inside the house. First of all, okay, Chettiars had space, but houses didn't have space. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have fans. They sat outside in the veranda. They got a breeze. The moon was there, so there would be light. And all socialization took place on the verandas. And the streets in a neighborhood were usually peopled by people of the same community. And that was true up until about the 1950s. And if you look in Madras, if you go down to Georgetown, to Perry's Bazaar, you'll see the Armenian Street, you'll see the Coral Merchant Street. Every street had a caste name because people from similar communities were on the streets. It made them feel comfortable. It made them feel safe. And this is an aerial photo of our Tamil Street. It's not a real Tamil Street, but it will show you how people were close by. And this is an old photo, I think, of a Brahmin. You can see the red and white stripes, so it's a Brahmin street. You can see the temple in the background and the chariot. So just think of what it was like when you pulled that chariot through a street 200 years ago. And all the houses were single-storied, and it was an experience. Okay, so the verandas, the way the houses were built, the way they were placed, that's what created a neighborhood. And that's how neighborhoods were socialized. Now, we'll go to the courtyard. Why did some houses have courtyards? You actually had to have a little bit of money to have a courtyard, but you didn't need too much. So architecturally, the courtyard played a big place because there was no wood to span large spaces. They could only make a room about 10 feet long because they didn't have, Tamil Nadu, you don't have a lot of wood. So if you don't have a courtyard, you have very little space inside your house. And in our Chetnad house, well, first of all, what are the uses of the courtyard also? You have air, you have ventilation. It's very nature-friendly. And the women could dry the grains. They could, husk the tamarind, pick out the neem seed oil pods, do all their activities in the courtyard. And here you can see they sit and have coffee together. This is in the agricultural house. And while they're doing this, every courtyard is surrounded by a corridor. And they put these loops, iron loops on the beams, and you might have 10 little infants swinging in the toti, like this woman is doing in the Chetnad house. Okay, so the courtyards also played a function. And every married son was given 2 rooms, one behind the other. They were about 10 feet square. Now, the inside room was for his wife's dowry, and the outside room, this is the outside room, would be for some items and for sleeping. Now, until the 60s, men and women didn't sleep together. The men slept in the front, the women slept in the courtyard in the back. Not the main courtyard, but the one in the back. And if a man wanted to spend the night with his wife, he had to signal to her during the day. She had to ask her mother-in-law for permission, and only if her mother-in-law gave permission could they spend the night together. So that lasted until the mid-60s. And the more, of course, the bigger the house, the more restrictions there were. There were lots of segregation restrictions on gender. So the mother couldn't be in the same room as the son-in-law. The daughter-in-law couldn't be in the same room as the father-in-law. The son-in-law couldn't be in the same room with an unmarried sister. And like that, lots of segregation. Why do you think that was so? Remember, this is a community where the men also worked abroad. Anyway, they were trying to keep harmony. They didn't want affairs. They wanted everything to go smoothly. So they had a lot of segregation rules. But the smaller the house, the less rules you could have because you didn't have the space to have them. Every house had a water vessel like this. Because one thing Tamil Nadu didn't have was a lot of water. And a lot of how you live depends on how much water you can get. And so every day, the cart would come and go to the local pond, which probably was muddy, and bring back whatever water there was. And that's one of the reasons that so much was spent by all communities, no matter how wealthy, on bronze gujas for storing water. Because water and wood are 2 very important resources of nature. All the houses in Tamil Nadu have mud walls. Even the fancy Chettinad houses have mud walls. And until 1990, about 90% of India, throughout all of India, used mud as mortar. They didn't use lime. Lime was special. There was no cement. And most of the time, mud was what held the mud, whether it was rocks or whatever, together. Okay, now I had to stretch this a bit to look at textiles and color, because you don't have that much. Okay, this is our textile gallery, and you can see the lady in the front. This is a typical way that the saris were worn throughout Chettinad. The pleats were tucked in the back. The palla was reversed and tied in the front. At the front of her, and then this is the back of her. Okay? Now, the saris were shorter. Why were the pleats in the back? Why were the saris shorter? Because women had a lot of work to do. So if you bend forward and you have a whole bunch of pleats, how are you going to do any work? You'll trip on them, you'll pull them out, they'll get dirty. So you put the pleats in the back. You can see she's in a red and turmeric sari. This is a Kanjipuram sari. These are the 2 favored colors in Tamil Nadu. These are the most auspicious colors. Why red? Why turmeric? Turmeric, of course, is an auspicious medicinal plant. It's used for food, and it's used for medicine also. This is a wedding. Red saris were always the traditional wedding sari in Tamil Nadu. So this is an old photo. It's an Andhra wedding. And in Andhra, most of the saris are white with red borders. At least that is one part of every wedding society. So why white and red? That's a question you have to ask yourself, which we'll go into. Okay, now I want you to look carefully at this photo. Can you find 5? This is a son and his father. So can you find 5 differences between the son and the father? Just look. Okay? So this family worked in Singapore. This photos from Singapore on the beginning of the 19th century. You can see it's very colonial. Can you see the column with the pentagon in the back and this podium and the little dog, very British. Okay, so they're in a colonial environment. So, have you all looked at it? So the father has a towel around his neck. The son has a very fancy angavastram. Okay. It was popular, actually compulsory to shave your head. So the father doesn't have much hair. The son likes his current hairstyle. He's wearing a watch, which means that he's concerned with time. He still has the Rudraksha necklace like his father, but for Shiva, the Shiva signs he has only on his forehead. His father has them all over his arms. The son doesn't want to flaunt his religion, but they're still both in bare feet. So he's still traditionally dressed, like for a family function. But you can see that times have changed. Now, I'm not a teacher for you, but what would be fun for you, you go home, you take a photo of your grandmother, your mother, and yourself, or a grandfather, father, and yourself, okay? And in the dresses that you wear for a family function. And then you take another photo, and you put them in everyday dress, okay? Grandmother, mother, and yourself. Look at how you're dressed today. You put that there. Then you think, okay, what has changed? And if you really want to think a little bit more, think, okay, if I have a daughter or son, in 25 or 30 years, how will he or she be dressed? What will she or he be wearing? Look how you're dressed now. Do you think it'll go back and be more formal? Will it be less formal? Will you cover up more? Will you cover up less? What do you think the trends will be for 25 years? So a photo like this can make you think of how within your own family, how things have changed and how they may change in the future. Okay, so this is a photo that you can do at home for fun. And keep it as a record, because I'm sure you'll need it in 10, 15 years. Okay. So we talked about white and red. Okay? So it's a Brahmin house. Why do Brahmin houses have white and red stripes? The ladies doing the kolam in front. This is our Ambur house. Look at the temple. All white and red stripes. Why white and red? Why not yellow and green? Why not something else? The men earlier on only wore white. If you were a distinguished man, you only wore white. And also the borders on the dhotis, they were from there that we began using special borders on saris, by the way. They came from the dhotis. The rest of the people wore lungis with checks, okay? And blue and white checks, red and white checks. These were the two major colors for centuries. This is a Telia Rumal. It's a 36-inch square. It was used, first of all, by fishermen. They soaked it in sheep dung of some sort because was resistant then to the sun, and they wrapped their heads with it. It was also used for packaging. So when you wanted to give a gift, or you had saris you had to wrap, you wrapped it in cloth. Now I was just thinking when I was going through this presentation, why don't we do packaging in cloth today? Why don't we look at all the different things we can do using our textiles for packaging? Why do we have to use cardboard? Why do we have to use metal? Why can't we go back and find a way that we could package with cloth? Just think about that since you're design students. So these are the earlier, basic earlier designs and colors that were used from around the 15th century. We have from Fustat in Egypt, from actually the 1300s, they found cloth from this coast. And what I didn't tell you about the Telia Rumal, they didn't know how to make patterns. They didn't know how to weave patterns. So they did them in ikat. The Telia Rumal is from ikat. Okay? Now from these stripes and checks, what did we have? We began with real Madras handkerchief. And these are real Madras handkerchief motifs from around 1990. We did a topic on real Madras handkerchief. Real Madras handkerchief was exported via Switzerland to London and then to Nigeria. And you can see on the side, I'll show you more. It became the dress for the particular tribes in Africa. Not only tribes, but what we see here is a funeral bed. Because in Nigeria, when you were, but one particular tribe, when you were born, you were gifted a cloth of real Madras handkerchief, and you collected them throughout the years. And when someone died in the house, that cloth and all the other real Madras handkerchief clothes were put on a funeral bed. And each room in the house was decorated with RMHK. Then, I think it was around the 1950s, the value of the Nigerian money went way down. And so they couldn't afford to buy much of the real Madras handkerchief. So there was a man in Madras, he was actually Swiss, and he was trying to redesign real Madras handkerchief. So he developed a lot of pastel colors. Instead of the bright blue and red and white, he developed pastel colors. And he exported it to the US. Now it bled, when you washed it, it bled terribly. But this became a fashion rage. And it was in the 60s, for men particularly, jackets were made, Bermuda shorts, slacks were made, women wore skirts. It was a major, fashion victory. And it lasted for about 15, 18 years. And then as everything goes in cycles, it died out. So this is an exhibition we have now on at Dakshinachitra. It's on quilts. Quilts are all using, now we call it Madras checks. They're all using Madras checks. It's a very beautiful exhibition. Now, how were people, we showed you the one model with the pleats in the back. So this is just a little bit more that we have. Okay. Until around 1930, no woman in Tamil Nadu wore blouses. They wore no petticoats. They just wrapped the sari around them. Now, look at her ears. These are called pambadam. All the women, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, they had earlobes that almost hung down to their shoulder. If you look at any of the Buddha pictures, Buddha had long earlobes. And it was considered that one of the 64 graces to have long earlobes. So they put really heavy earrings in their ears. So these are Tamil earrings. This is another set of Tamil earrings. Okay. Now we're talking about colors. How important are colors? Now, do you have any idea what this is? This is symbolism of the Navagrahas, the 9 planets. Every planet has a grain, usually a dal, a lentil, and every lentil and every planet has a color. Now, why do they have colors? So, here's the Navagraha shrine. Every planet has a color. Now, one of the things with colors in India, particularly in the south, is that there is a feeling that the world has to be in balance. Whatever's in the cosmos takes place on Earth, and everything should be harmonious. So a balance has to be kept. You'll never find one thing. You find many things. You'll find 2 together, 3 together, 5, 7, 9. This is 9. Because everything has to be in harmony with each other, whether it's even the five elements. So balance is a very critical thing. And it's, okay, you balance colors through their intensity, but it's much deeper than that. Okay, so basically that is what I wanted to say about Tamil Nadu. Now we'll go on to Kerala. So what does Kerala have that Tamil Nadu doesn't have? It has water, and it has very thick forests with good wood, hardwood, jackwood. It has teak, it has rosewood, it has so many good woods. And when you have water and you have forests, everything grows. You don't have to live near each other. In a Tamil street, because you only have the one village well, and even if, like in the Chettiar houses, they have wells, but usually there's no water in the well, or it's not potable. So they have to live together, because you have to be close to a water source. But in Kerala, where there's so much water, the living plan is separate. So this is a Syrian Christian house. This was when we had a lot of water at Dakshinachitra. Okay? And there's another angle of the house. Take a look at it. Look at the gables. This is the back side. There's a well next to the kitchen. Now, this house actually has completely wooden walls. And they're held together by a plank that goes through, and that plank is always decorated. It's always carved. And this is true for the smallest house to the richest house. And that's the curve of the boat, because most of the houses were on waterways. And the other thing you'll see, if you look at this house, and this is a very simple house actually. The walls have different patterns. They have different widths of panels, but they've grooved them all in a similar way. So you might have a 6-inch width, a 4-inch width, an 8-inch width, and they've interspersed them with palmyra. So they've given a lovely pattern, even though they haven't had money for good wood, or they haven't, that was what was available. Also, look at how they've carved the rafters in the end. Now, I don't know if Okay, there's also, right near the girls, there's also a rod that goes through and holds all those rafters together. Because a wooden house has to be well structured, like a garment. A garment has to be well structured if it's going to sit properly, if it's going to last long, and if it's going to drape properly. So when I think of a wooden house, I think of a garment, because there are certain ways you have to do a fashion. It has to be able to sit properly, last long, and drape properly. And for a house, for a wooden house, if they took away these planks and the rods through the rafters, the house would fall apart. Okay, so here's another part of the veranda. Okay, maybe you can see the rod. They always decorate the rod also. And there's a planter's chair there. Now the planter's chair is very ergonomically designed, because when you pull out the leaves and put your legs straight, your feet and your heart are on the same level. So you can sit back, you can read, you can sleep, you can do whatever, but it's very healthy. Someone else has tried to redesign this chair. Okay, you can see the two doors. These Christians were merchants. They were in Musuris, which is above Kochi, and then in the 1300s there was a huge storm, and they had to leave the Musuris, and they went to Kottayam, and they also bought land, and they farmed, so they needed granaries. And I just put these are three measures. The measures, the one on the right is from Kanyakumari, which is now in Tamil Nadu. The one in the middle is from Trivandrum, and the one in the left is from Malabar, the north. So look how they've used their imagination just to design measures for paddy. I don't know if you can see it, but they have these are rakes for shoveling paddy, and you can see that they're designed. And these are the gables. They put gables on their house because of the rain. First of all, you had steeped roofs with long overhangs so that the wood would be covered, and the hot air would rise and go out the gables. So the houses were well planned. And inside the house, we've put a bed in, but normally people would sleep on mats on the floor. And on the left, this was for a bed, but it was also for storing coconuts. And this house, the wooden house, is 200 years old. Now, that wooden house ends on the end there. That little window is to connect the modern house, which is 100 years old, to the 200-year-old house. Because at the turn of the century, they felt that this small house wasn't convenient. I mean, they had a shed for their kitchen was outside. They had a shed for their cattle. They had rubber and rice, so they had a place to store that. But they added on to this house, and what did they add on? They added on a dining room with a courtyard. They added on a kitchen with a well so that the woman could draw the water directly into the kitchen. And they added on a living room. Because as I said, so with an outside entrance. So all the houses did this. How can they bring in outsiders and still keep the inside of their house sacred? So in Pondicherry, what they did, they put a stair outside and they put a room in the front upstairs so that no one had to come into their downstairs. And here they added to the side of the house so you could enter and exit without coming into the main house. And in Chetnad, they added a living room before the courtyard. So you had the veranda, and you go into a living room where outsiders could come. And then beyond that was the courtyard where no outsider could come. Even today, it's like that. Okay. Now, these are just simple objects from Kerala. When a person comes to a house, The one in the bottom is a kindi, and a kindi is used to wash the feet of a visitor. The lamp is lit every morning and evening at sunrise and sunset, and the umbrella is always handy for a visitor because of the sun or the rain. So these are kindis. Kindis are used for all kinds of purposes, and a house will have many kindis. It's used for pouring water also. And this is a derivative of a kindi for a temple. It's also used for the abhishekam in the temples. And because Kerala has a lot of wood, until the late 19th century, much of what they ate off of leaves, but all their utensils were wooden. So you had storage vessels, you had serving vessels, you had vessels, containers for salt and for spices, even for grinding. Everything was in wood. Now this is a jewelry box. It's very typical, I'm sure you've all seen it. It's called a nettor box. And they put a lot of emphasis on locks and brasswork. And you can see the painting, all natural colors, of course. What happened? Sorry. And the chest with the circular lid is for garments. It's for saris, for costumes. And the ones on the right side, those are traditional money boxes. That's how they stored their money. And the garments were all white. In the beginning, all white, because there was such lush vegetation around that they felt colors would interfere with the garments, with the vegetation. So Syrian Christian woman. You can see her one earlobe on the left. These are the traditional Syrian Christian earrings. This is the Nair woman. She has these large earrings in her ears. Again, your earlobe goes around the earring. And the way you were allowed to wear a sari depended on what caste you were. And of course, this is the traditional Kerala hairstyle. Here you can see it. Okay, these are all Hindu women. These are Muslim women. The one on the left, she's 95 years old. She was the first college graduate from Telacheri, a Muslim woman. And you can see this other woman. And this is a traditional woman also. And of course, these are girls today. This is up in not Telacheri, in what is it? Anyway, it's in the north, in Malabar. Men didn't have much of a costume. They wore their veshti and their angavastram, and that's all they wore. Even today, if a man wants to go into the sanctum of a Hindu temple, he has to be bare-chested. In Kerala, all men have to be bare-chested when they enter a temple, because respect is having a bare chest. It's being unclothed, not clothed. And this is just the natural paintings. This is Radha and Krishna. I think it's more the atmosphere of what they're wearing than actually the clothes that they have on. So you have to look at all of these when you go to a museum. Look at them for inspiration. What can I learn from this? What do I know about this? And talking about knowing the history, you know that Tamil Nadu Tourist Department hired NID, the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, to do a study of Chidambaram town, how to make the town more tourist-friendly. And do you know what their conclusion was? Their conclusion was that these garish red and white stripes on the temple wall should be changed to a lovely pattern of color. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that these students didn't have a clue about customs or history because they didn't have any understanding of the meaning of the colors of red and white. And when you study something, when you want to change something, make sure you know the history of what that motif is. Ask questions. You have to ask questions. What is this? Why is this? What's the meaning of this? So that you know before you do something. Because that was a really stupid answer and a big report that came from NID. So knowledge is very important. So for inspiration, if you look at the folk arts, the Kerala folk arts, this is the mask of the Tirubudam. The photograph above is what it is like normally. And next to it is Bhagavati in wood. Bhagavati is the main deity in Kerala. Even in Tamil Nadu, it's the goddess who's the main deity, Mariamman. And Mariamman and Bhagavati. Because red is always Shakti. Shakti is energy. Okay, and she's very much involved with the Nagas. And she's also represented by that sword on the stool. So why is she represented like that? Next to her is a Gajalakshmi lamp. Below is a tortoise seat for the Brahmins. Why the tortoise? Always ask these questions. Why we have many you'll find many motifs with tortoise. Why? What is the significance of tortoise? And look at the costumes of the folk arts. This is a Teyam. This is a Bhuta Teyam. Look at the back of how he's done the back of it. Red and white and a touch of black. Black will keep away evil. Black is a non-color. So look how it's been done. They're all the costumes are red and white. And they're always beautiful. And the headdress will be wood, a light wood. And he's on his way to the Bhagavati shrine, his Buddham. He has to take 2 chickens and sacrifice them to Bhagavati and then come back to his own devotees and bless them. He's called the Veluda Buddham. Okay. So look at Kerala folk performing arts. Their costumes are incredible, actually. Look at the top, how they've done the top also. Now Karnataka. What's happening? Okay. Not much on Karnataka. This is a Kodava house, a Kurg house. Kurg's. This is the veranda of the Kurg house. Each house has a beautiful designed window. Kurg is partly in the Western Ghats. It was highly forested. And so when they built their houses, they built these huge columns. This is a photo of a Kurg from 1852. Look at his costume. Even today, they're given, on their wedding, they're given that knife in his belt and that bigger knife. Even women carried knives because there were so many tigers and wild animals around. And the Kurg chieftains are mentioned in Silapariharam, so they've at least been around from 7th century, if not earlier. And they're quite a fascinating people. They have a very tribal culture, though they're very modern. Actually, the person who brought up NIFT was Rati Vinay Jha, and she's a Kurg. She spent the first 5 years developing NIFT in Delhi. The first 5 years of NIFT. These are the Kurg dresses. You can see how it's changed a bit from 1852, but they're still using that tunic. And the women have their pleats in the back, and it's pulled over the shoulder. A lot of tribal women wear shorter saris, put their pleats in the back, and knot it over their shoulder. So I'm not sure where this one came from. This is a wedding. You can see the knife on the side. He has the other knife in his belt. And they're ancestor worshippers. So the first, when anyone enters a Korg house, they first pray at this lamp because it's giving blessings from the ancestors. And this is a ancestor shrine. They have a function once a year where they bring in a Teyam who invokes the spirit of the founding ancestor, and then he blesses the members of the clan. They all live in clan houses called Einmanais. And each Einmanai, each clan, patrilineal clan, has to maintain and safeguard a forest of about 1,200 acres. It's called the sacred forest, no hunting and no killing of animals, no felling of trees is allowed. And they have small shrines in them. They even worship stones. Because it's in the Western Ghats, a lot of Korg is in the Western Ghats. We've done an exhibition on the Western Ghats. And the other thing they worship is the river Kaveri. It's the river Kaveri, which starts in Korg. That's the beginning of Kaveri River. Kaveri River runs about 750 kilometers, of which most of it is in Tamil Nadu. And just to show you the kind of products from bamboo, they have all the Korg products were either clay or bamboo and just some metal. And then nearby, all the paintings that were done on the walls of houses are now being done on paper and sold. These are Chitara paintings. This is a wedding painting, actually. But we don't have much of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and I forgot to bring in the Ilkal saris from Karnataka, which are very important. This is an ikat house. Ikat, of course, is where you dye the yarn before you put it on the loom. What I have on is ikat. This is an ikat pattern. This is the inside of the ikat house. We had an exhibition on the ikat telia rumals and the loom on the front. We now have 4 weavers at Dakshinachitra, full time. We put different saris from Andhra and Telangana on the wall. There are 17 varieties of saris, of designs and techniques used in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. 17 different designs. We put 5 up, that's all. And then I said the ikat is very important. And so is kalamkari, still in Andhra Pradesh, in Masilipatnam and Pedana, and also in Kalahasti. And then we put up a photo of Madame Pompadour. She was in the beginning of the 1700s. She has on a kalamkari dress. Now I keep asking, how did they get white? Because they soak kalamkari in buffalo milk, and then it turns it all sort of beige. But if you put kalamkari in the sun, the buffalo milk will bleach into white, and the colors will remain. And she's embroidering with a yeri needle, the same kind of embroidery we do today. She was the mistress of Louis XV. And this is kalamkari, which is contemporary, which is enhanced with embroidery. And I hope I've given you some ideas for inspiration. There are lots of things you can see and learn from at a museum. But you have to think about them. You can't just walk through. Anyway, thank you very much. It's the end of my talk. Any questions you have, I'll be happy to answer. You have any questions? No, okay. What time is it? Okay. Anyway, I hope you do go home and look at your grandparents, parents, and yourself and put the photos together and keep them for future, because it'll be a nice namesake. Okay, that's all for me. I'll be able to see you at Dakshinachitra in the future. Please make some trips. Think about what you're seeing when you come. And we have a wonderful contemporary dance performance on October 4th at the Kalari from Bangalore. It's only the entrance fee for students, so it's not much. And it should be quite exciting. They're dancing at the Music Academy the next day, but they're an internationally known group. October 4th, I think it starts at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, so any of you would like to get any doubts or clarification you want to put across your thoughts on your visit to Dakshinachitra?
My name is Kumari. I have a question. Why the door side of the Dakshinachitra is so small?
Why is it not so small?
Yeah.
You know, it's cast space. It's very funny because if you wanted to do a big door, you had to get permission from the zamindar. And if you see the tribal doors, they're like this, you have to crawl in them. You know, so it's very, very strange actually. And I found that even when they're doing new houses, even though they can make the door as tall as they want, they still make this small door. So, but the weaver's house, the doors are small. That is not cast space. That I think is, they brought old doors and put them in the house. Right?
Please pass.
Yeah, there is a hierarchy with doors. But they also say, one of the reasons they're small is that you have to bend to go in. So, that shows humility, but if someone is trying to attack you, they won't be able to because they're bending. But, and they always have pictures of the Hindu gods above them, or nature. So, yeah, doors are strange actually. But doors are also the transition between public spaces and private spaces. And as a threshold, that's always been significant in all cultures throughout history. Even today in India, they sell little packets of the 9 gems, and they put them under the door when they do the construction. The 9 gems, of course, signify the 9 planets, because cosmos is very important in Mahamadu. Any other questions?
Hello ma'am, I'm Ankita. My question is when the houses were built, there was so much space, there was so much open space. So how did they ensure the security of the people living inside?
How do they ensure the what?
The security, like their verandas.
The security.
And
Yeah, you have no police force. So that's one of the reasons I think people live on streets together, because they felt more secure. And when we were taking down the Chetnod house, because the walls are mud, anybody can dig through a mud wall. So what I saw was, that the walls are 3 feet wide, okay? So they had put like a screen in the middle of the wall. So if someone was digging in, they would hit that screen, a metal screen, and they couldn't go further. So, but visitors, there were no hotels, so if people were traveling to different villages, they could get permission and sleep in the veranda of a house. But if you look at the locks they have on doors, They're huge locks, many locks. And in these small rooms which belong to the sons in the Chetnan houses, there are no windows outside. They're nuts for security. So they were very stuffy. So, does that answer your question? Now, we might, malign our police force, but they actually do a good job at law and order.
Ma'am, during my visit to Dakshinachitra, I saw first question. Are all shops traditional shops or are there also commercial shops?
At Dakshinachitra, really like the craft bazaar?
Yes.
The craft bazaar are all traditional artisans. We don't take any agents. They have to do their own work, which they do. You can see them doing the painting, doing the carvings. They're all traditional artisans. But our craft shop is commercial. So,
the major question was, I saw a few depictions of Buddhism and all, of Buddha, and carvings of religions that were not particularly South Indian. So,
well, Buddhism was definitely South Indian at one point. Buddhism was very popular until the 10th century. If you look in Kanjipuram, there's what they call small Kanjipuram. There were 100 viharas in Kanjipuram in the 6th century, 100 viharas. And there is a Pallava king who wrote a play, Matavalasam, in the early 7th century, and he makes fun of both the Buddhists and the Jains, and the Hindus at the same time. And Jainism began to die out in the 8th and 9th centuries, but there are special Jain temples in, I went once to, I think it's not too far from Jinji, but there's a whole series of Jain temples and Jain mutts, which was South Indian. They're not from Ahmedabad, they're not from the north. So actually, Tamil Nadu has a very strong history of different religions. And as far as, we put this up in Dakshinachitra, as far as Islam is concerned, the traders from Arabia came to Tamil Nadu and to Kerala before Christ. We have records from 3rd century BCE of Muslim. There was no Muslim, there was no Islam at that time, of Arabian traders coming to India. And if you were a trader, you had to wait, you had to sit here for 3 or 4 months and wait till the winds went the other way so you could go back home. And so many of the sailors, the merchants, married Hindu women. And in Tamil Nadu particularly in the Tiruvallur, Tuticorin area, there are a lot of, sorry my phone is ringing. There are a lot of Muslim families where the wives were originally Hindu, and they mixed customs. And the same thing in Kerala. The Mapplas are supposedly from Arab traders and Hindu women. But when Islam came in the 7th century, the sailors had to adopt Islam if they wanted to trade. And so there's been a lot of harmony, some disruptions, but mainly harmony from Kerala and Tamil Nadu with Islam. Any other questions? Did that answer your question? And we put that, people get very upset because in the Brahmin house we put a Christian section. Why should we put another religion in a Hindu house, in a Hindu Brahmin house? And I did it purposely because I wanted to show that Tamil Nadu had a history of different religions. Unfortunately, I didn't have any artifacts from Islam that I could put in also. And if we were an ancient museum, we'd have Buddhist sculptures and Jain sculptures, but I didn't have any. Yeah.
Hello, from actually. And which South Indian architecture style do you find most unique and valuable? South Indian architectural style do you find most unique and why?
Which do I find most unique? Well, I think that's right. Each region, it depends on, architecture depends on the environment. It depends on the nature and the resources around you. Because the earlier houses were built with resources within about 3-4 kilometers from the house. I like the Kodava house. I think that's very interesting. But yeah, I like all the different styles because they all have a meaning for where they are and the people who live in them. In the North Deccan, they have these huge stone houses. They're gorgeous, and I wasn't able to bring one in. But if you ever get to Gulbarga, around that area, there's beautiful, beautiful architecture. But difficult to bring in because nobody buys stone. So hard to get them down. Yeah?
So how did Buddhism bloom in Tamil Nadu? Because it started out in Nalanda and it moved upwards.
No, it started in Bodh Gaya. It actually, he was born in Lumbini, which is now in Nepal. And actually, there was a lot of going back and forth between South India and the North. I was in Bihar. Bihar has opened a brand new museum. It's very beautiful. It's actually 2 years old now. And they have a bronze manufacturing place, traditional. The bronzes are like from 6th century, 7th century. And there are lots of Tamil inscriptions on the bronze. So first of all, you had Ashoka. I mean, the main person who brought Buddhism around the south is Ashoka. There are 12 Ashoka inscriptions in Karnataka. And it was Ashoka's son who brought Buddhism to Sri Lanka. Buddhism is the main religion in Sri Lanka. Religions travel, ideas travel. Hinduism is through the folk arts that people learned about the Mahabharata, Ramayana, because the puppeteers would say the Ramayana and Mahabharata and do all the plays. There are so many different folk arts which have narratives to them. And that's how people learned the stories. And there were bards who came and sang. So that's how ideas traveled, actually, religious ideas, other ideas. And in Tanjore, there was an international university in the 10th century from people from all over India and abroad. And we had Chinese monks here. So the Chinese monks, one son, in the 6th century, he spent 10 years in India. He gathered all the documents, all the manuscripts, took them back to China, and convinced the queen that Buddhism was the way to go. And he was the one who really started Buddhism in China, or at least grounded it in China. Because before that it was Taoism. And so it's fascinating to study history and how ideas move and how people move. So, and why did Buddhism die out in Tamil Nadu? Well, once the king changes religions, in Buddhism, very often the king was Hindu and the queen was Buddhist. But then the power was with the king. And so slowly Buddhism died out. You should go to Amaravati and look at Evid and Madras Museum, look at the Amaravati sculptures. They're from 1st century BCE to 1st century AD. They show that there are Romans in the sculptures. There was a lot of international travel, actually. And the sculptures are very beautiful. And in Amaravati, there's a big stupa. It's all from 1st century. If you go to Sanchi, in Bhopal, near Bhopal, it's also, at your age, as much as you can, travel. You can travel at very little money, take buses, take trains, but travel, because that exposure will be with you for your life, and you'll find you draw on it for years. Actually for your whole life. Okay? Any other questions? Okay.
Hi, I'm Hita. I wanted to ask in which region of, South India was the colonial style of building, colors and all of that was influenced the most?
Okay. Colonialism was throughout South India. Okay, in Madras. Okay, where is colonialism? Where do you see it? Do you know where the police building is on Marina Beach? That's from 1832. That's very colonial. That's neoclassic. Then, when you look at the Senate House, when you look at the High Court, they call it Indo-Saracenic. That's really a misnomer, actually. Because what they've done is they've combined different styles together. But remember, it's the Indian craftspeople who built them. They did bring in designers. Earlier, it was engineers who did the designs, but then they brought in new architects. But when you see an arch, which is not an arch, but just a semicircle, that's a very colonial aspect. Stained glass windows came in from Britain. You have sort of church-like windows. The flat roofs. Indian architects couldn't figure out how to do a flat roof. Doing roofing was very difficult. Most roofs, in villages today, in big houses, they put wooden planks. On top of that, they'll put medicinal leaves, and then heap it with mud, and then maybe coat it with lime. So that was tough when it rained a lot. They had to be maintained all the time. So then they came up with the Madras terrace roof, where they put bricks on edge, small bricks on edge. It was physics. Actually, it was Islam that brought in the true arch also, because it's all about physics and architecture, and they haven't really figured it out really. Okay, now of course, if you look at architecture, it's totally environmentally unfriendly. It's all glass. Can you imagine living in a glass house with the sun beating down in the west? Why do the developers want to put so much glass in? Because it goes fast, the building goes fast, the foundations don't have to be as strong, it costs them less money. It goes quicker and it costs less. But it's environmentally very bad. Anyway, my opinion. Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, thank you very much.